So, if you're a comic book creator, should you avoid working at companies like Marvel? Hi, my name is Gamal Hennessy. I'm an attorney, author, and business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry. And this week's question comes from a news story that was posted earlier in the week. Celebrated Brazilian artist Mike Deodato recently posted an open letter to Marvel concerning his lack of payment and recognition for the Ironheart character that appeared in both Wakanda Forever and will have her own series on Disney Plus starting in a few weeks. Now, since the story broke, news stories have come out that said Marvel reached out to Mr. Deodato to resolve the situation, but it's still an open question. If you're a comic book creator in 2025, should you avoid working for companies like Marvel and, to the same extent, DC if you can? Now, Deodato's story isn't unique to comics. In fact, almost once a year, depending on how many MCU projects come out, The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, or Business Insider, or some other comics adjacent news outlet will run the classic comic creators shut out of the film profit story. It happened with Brubaker in The Winter Soldier. It happened with Donny Cates and Venom. It's happening now with Ironheart. But to answer this question, I think we need to take a page out of Machiavelli's The Prince, which is a weird source to answer a question about comics, but stay with me. We're going to focus on what is, not what should be. The reality is that comic book creators love comics too much. I did a video about this a couple weeks ago. So Disney has no incentive of changing the classic economic formula of buy low, sell high, and retain much of the profits as possible. That's not going to change. What can change is your perspective on the potential gig based on three fundamental questions. The first question, what is it that you're trying to accomplish in comics from a business standpoint in the first place? Do you want to make money, as much money as you can up front, or do you want long-term ownership? Can you afford to pay your bills some other way? Or do you need the money from comics to make sure that you're not homeless? The second question is, why is it that you want to work freelance? In comics, there are basically three ways to create comics from a legal standpoint. There is freelance, there's creator owned, and there is independent. If you want to work at Marvel, you're working freelance. So why is it that you want to work freelance? Do you want the page rate up front and are comfortable with no back end ownership? The third question is, why do you want to work for a company like Marvel or DC specifically? Do you want to have access to their characters? Essentially, the creative opportunity to play with their toys? Do you want access to the millions of readers and followers that a company like Marvel has so that you can co-opt some of those readers and fans for your own work later on down the line? Now, if you want what Marvel is actually offering, and this is not an endorsement of Marvel's business practices or their payment policies or anything else, this is an analysis of what Marvel is as a comic book company in relation to creators. If you want what Marvel is offering, that's a page rate, that's the access to the characters, that's the access to the audience, then the answer to the question, should you avoid working for Marvel, is no. You should try to get as much work from Marvel as you can. But if you aren't interested in those things, or those things are not as important to you as other things, then you should probably, as a comic book creator, be more interested in independent comics or, to a certain extent, creator-owned comics. Now, even if you decide that working for Marvel makes sense. I normally advise my clients and the members of Comics Experience to avoid pitching new characters to Marvel or DC if you can. And the reason is fairly simple. At this point, Marvel has 72,000, more than 72,000 individual issues of their comics. And there are more than 7,000 characters buried in all of those issues that form loosely a continuity and a universe. So they have a lot of characters. They do not need your character. If you, when you're pitching a story or developing a narrative, need a particular type of character to fit a particular role in that narrative, go look in the Marvel Universe. I recommend the classic um, Encyclopedia of the Marvel Universe, which is now available from the 80s. It's much better than anything that came out since. Go in there and find the type of character that you need. That way, you could use one of the 5 or 6 characters that fit what you're looking for, and you avoid having a Ironheart problem. Take the classic examples of Elektra and Spawn. Frank Miller created Elektra in 1981 while he was working on Daredevil. The character became fairly popular, and when Frank Miller left Marvel to go work on his own book, Sin City, Elektra, if you've read both Daredevil and Sin City, you realize Elektra would have fit in pretty seamlessly in the Sin City narrative. In fact, Frank Miller created a kind of Elektra character and stuck them in there anyway, Miho, but that did not gain the traction and did not take off to the extent that Elektra did. But Frank Miller couldn't use Elektra because Elektra wasn't his character because he put it in Daredevil. Contrast that with Spawn. Todd McFarlane created Spawn in 1977. But when he was working for Marvel and DC in the 80s and the 90s, at no point did he introduce Spawn into Spider-Man or any of the other books he was working on. So Spawn never became a Marvel character. When McFarlane left to form Image, he could take Spawn with him and go on to create a substantial independent comic book empire based on characters that he owns, and he owned it because he never introduced it into Marvel while he was working freelance there. So, in closing, if you want what the big two are offering, then get your money up front, build a following from the strength of their IP, and keep your characters for yourself. If you don't want to see your work on the big screen while your wallet is empty, then don't work for them. Either way, contact me if you have questions about the industry or if you need legal advice on a current project. Until next time, get off the internet and go make some comments.